Welcome to this special edition of Business Redefined. Always takes place on Tuesday, but why not have a conversation on a Thursday? And we're delighted to have on set Professor James McFie. We want to talk about the FIRE Awards, Financial Reporting Excellence Awards 2024 edition, and we want to unpack what this is about, why it is critical, and why you should be part of it. Professor, always a delight, man.
Thank you very much indeed.
Welcome on set. Prof, there are those of us who might be watching and wondering, what is FIRE Awards? Why should we be keen about it? Give us a FIRE Awards 101 and why for this particular time it's critical.
Okay. Well, first of all, let me just explain what FIRE stands for.
Sure.
Because FI is financial reporting, and then F is financial, R reporting, and then E is excellence.
Excellence, yes.
And, you know, we've got to keep in mind that when a company is going to present its integrated report today, its annual report, first of all, it's got to be transparent. You know, in other words, is this really the profit or the loss that the company made in that particular year? And sometimes people get a wrong impression about that. You know, that if, for example, the company makes a loss, you know, what are the auditors doing? No, the auditors just simply make sure that the reporting is honest.
Yeah.
That's what, you know, and integrity is one of the principles that every single accountant should have.
Yes.
But now, you know, we've got to keep in mind that a lot of our investors on the Nairobi Securities Exchange are international investors. They, you know, they bring in a lot of money. It can sometimes be hot money. Last year, our stock exchange went down, has come up quite remarkably this year. But in the United States last year, the stock exchange went up on average by 25%. And then the Magnificent Seven, that is, you know, the IT companies, Microsoft, Google, Apple, etc. Those seven, they went up 45% last year. Yeah. So a lot of money went out of Nairobi across to the US, but that money now is looking for places where it can be invested so that they get a return. Yeah. And you see, if you came in, let's suppose you came in December last year or early January this year. Yeah. You were buying Kenya shillings, you get 160 shillings for your $1.
Sure.
If you want to go back out now, your dollar will cost you only 129 shillings.
Correct.
So just purely on the strengthening of the Kenya shilling, and there are a number of factors behind that. I don't want to go into that, but there are a number of factors behind that. But you know, just simply on the strengthening of the Kenya shilling, I already will make a profit of about 20% on my investment. Yeah. But then, you know, we want to have a look at the performance of companies, and you know, obviously, some of the banks, for example, will always do well, and they are doing exceptionally well even at the moment.
Yes, Q3 numbers.
KCB is you know, looking at a 44 billion, you know, and
net earnings.
These are phenomenal numbers.
Yeah.
Okay. I think it's also very important to keep in mind that, you know, these banks they are now multinationals. Their profit comes not only from Kenya, principally from Kenya, but also it comes from Tanzania, Uganda, yes, Rwanda, South Sudan, and even in the case of equity, the DRC, and also KCB is now going there. And the numbers, when you look at those numbers, there is a phenomenal amount of intellectual capital which has gone behind that expansion. But you see, then we want to see how are you going to report your financial well-being or financial, you know, sometimes you're going to make a loss, not the banks, okay, unfortunately, yes, they will never make a loss. But another thing that is happening now, you see, is that especially in Europe and also in the United States, they're looking at how environmentally sound is your business. And I know in the case of Sassini, for example, Sassini sells tea and coffee into Europe, a lot of tea into the UK. A lot of the tea obviously goes to Pakistan, and it also goes to Egypt. And I think it's always important just to keep in mind that transport costs now, because of the Houthis closing down the Red Sea and the Suez Canal, it means that 1 ton of cargo, instead of costing $450 to get to Europe, it's now got to go around the whole of South Africa, and that then means it costs $1,800 to get that ton to Europe, 4 times as much. And when we want to get our tea to Egypt, you can't go up the Red Sea and the Suez Canal any longer. you've got to go around the whole of Africa and then right across the Mediterranean to Alexandria. So there are a lot of external things, but you know, many companies in Kenya are doing incredibly well in spite of all of those things there. Yeah. But now, you know, are those numbers in that set of financial statements, first of all, are they true? We as judges in the Fire Award can't actually make that judgment, simply because, you know, if you want to really go into the numbers, you've got to do a forensic audit.
Correct.
And, you know, but one of the things that we're looking at is disclosure. And Europe and the UK and also the US to a much lesser extent, but they're really looking at this whole thing of environmental, social, and governance reporting. So, in fact, the Institute of Certified Public Accountants on the 14th of this month, they have the launch of the roadmap
yes.
For IFRS sustainability disclosure standards in Kenya. And so this is now, the Institute of Certified Public Accountants is now going to make this mandatory, you know, across. It's already mandatory for the companies quoted on the NSE from the year 2022. Yeah. But you know, this is going to come, as you say, in 2027. It's going to be right across the board.
Let me just hold you there, Prof. And you're touching on something very important, which I've seen is actually one of the themes for Fire Awards 2024 edition, and that is sustainability. So far we've seen what we'd call fragmented reporting on sustainability by various companies. Talk to us about how these awards now factor in the streamlining that we are now seeing coming in with IFRS S1 and S2. Okay,
so, well, one thing is, let me just, before I talk about that, let me just talk about a thing called integrated reporting. Because, you know, there were companies actually which were issuing integrated reports, and they weren't actually integrated reports at all.
Okay.
Why? Simply because when you're doing integrated reporting, you're reporting not only on your financial results, or your financial capital, should we say, but also your human capital. And I think it's very important always to keep in mind that, you know, human capital in a company is the most significant factor in the success of that particular company. You know, it could be that your business is now obsolete, okay, insofar as, I remember when my mother died here, okay, I got a telegram from my sister in the US saying, well, I hope she recovers. But I got the telegram after my mother had already died. You know, so, but you don't send telegrams any longer. But anyway, human capital is a very important thing. And I remember one company, I won't mention the name, but I looked through its annual report for, I think it was to see if they were going to introduce it early. And they had the word capital 153 times in their annual report. But they mentioned human capital in relation to, you know, nothing at all. Yeah. So, but then you've got, in addition to that, you've got your manufactured capital, which, let's suppose, you know, the banking industry today, just really, their manufactured capital is absolutely vital. You know, if you take NCBA, it's got more than 60 million customers. You know, KCB is 28 million, Equity is 33 million, but NCBA, and they've got customers over in West Africa where they don't even have a branch. And they got, you know, customers over the whole of the East African community. So you've got manufactured capital, which is very important for the companies, okay, and it's got to be up, you know, really working well. Intellectual capital. You then have social and relationship capital, and then the sixth one is natural capital. And that's, you know, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, some people, they come to Nairobi and they fall in love with Nairobi, they never go back to the US or any of those other S countries, okay? Yes. So, but now, with S1 and S2, what you're doing is, you're looking at how are your financial results going to be impacted by the outside, okay? In other words, you know, you have an environment, okay? And obviously what will happen is it has an effect on the company. And then also, you have, what does the company do to the environment? If, for example, I know there are a whole lot of companies, you've heard about them, down the Nairobi River, okay, and that one goes right down to Malindi, okay? These companies have been, you know, putting pollutants into that particular water. Downstream, you have elephants and you have even people drinking the water, which has got all of these things in the water, and in fact they're getting cancer and so on and so forth. And there's a lot of farming, in fact, along there. If you go out to Kitui, You go down to the river, you know, there's a lot of farming on the sides of the river, on the banks of the river. So S1 and S2 are just simply laying down, okay, well look, S1 is more or less, you know, when you are looking at international financial reporting standards, the basic document is IAS1, International Accounting Standard number 1. And it'll talk about, you know, that you've got to produce certain statements to portray, to give to the your customers, your clients, the shareholders, certain information. And then, of course, you know, in this particular case, S1, IFRS S1 is going to be the basic standard, okay? And people are now speculating, well, what is IFRS S3 going to be about? You know, and I was in a webinar just the other day, and they said, well, it's going to be this,
Yes.
and, you know. But anyway, those two are the basic, you know, basic standards whereby your environmental footprint, okay, is how is it going to be affected by these standards? Now, one of the things which is interesting, you see, is that you know, there is an entity in Denmark which is talking about not a minimum wage, but a livable wage. Yeah. And the difficulty about that is that, you know, well, it's going to cost businesses. It's going to push up prices. And, you know, this is a very, very fine balancing act, because when you take, you know, China 2 days ago announced, look, we are abolishing all tariffs. They are not going to charge tariffs on anything that they import. But you've got to keep in mind, up to the end of October, China had a trade surplus of $785 billion.
That's a huge amount.
It's, you know, I was listening to a webinar about couple of months ago, and when they were saying, when you looked at Germany, when it was doing really well, it's now broken. Yeah. But when you look at Japan, when it was doing really well, the surpluses there are minute compared to what China. And for the year, their balance of trade surplus will be more than $1 trillion. So, you know, and they must say to themselves, well, look, we're so successful in China that, you know, let's stop this thing of putting 100% on EVs, electric vehicles, okay, being imported into the US. Trump, we don't know what he's going to, you know, after. Is he awake yet? But, you know, maybe this morning he wakes up and gets a new sort of tariff that he's going to impose and all the rest of it. But anyway, the point is really that, you know, one of the things that people are becoming aware of is the fact that, you know, we've got to try to make the world a more sustainable place. Yeah. And, you know, this is especially the case in Kenya. You know, if we don't look after our environment, you know, the people who are burning charcoal, unfortunately, I'm a big supporter of the charcoal industry, simply because when we burn charcoal, we're not burning imported gas, we're not burning imported paraffin or anything like that. But, you know, we're not planting the trees to get the charcoal.
Prof, let me just hold you there and ask you, given what you've said, someone might be watching and a company is following this and wondering, why is it important for us to be part of the FIRE Awards?
Well, first of all, you know, we have 114 private companies who take part, and we have 1,040 public entities which take part. Yeah. Okay? Now, why should we take part? Well, first of all, you're going to have your financial statements, your annual report examined, and this is examined at 3 levels. The first level, and some will then be, well, sort of eliminated, you know, and then at the second level, they are then going to give an independent examination of the same financial statements or annual report, and then it goes to the third level. Now, obviously, it's got to be in a pyramid style. It can't be, you know, because 114, if I were going to, you know, I was just thinking, I'm just, ABSA's annual report, okay, is 129 pages. Mind you, they produce a separate sustainability report, which is 80 pages. But you see then, you know, in the US, BlackRock, its annual report is 76 pages. Now, equity is 282 pages. KCB is 252 pages. NCBA is 238 pages. Yes. So the thing is that we wouldn't be able to look through all of those 114, at this level. But you see, what you're doing is, let's suppose you submit your annual report, your financial statements for examination. We will actually tell you now, look, you didn't have this, you didn't have this, you didn't have this, you didn't have this, okay, etc. So you're going to get assistance. Last year, the Kenya Ports Authority, SACCO, they sat me down at lunch. It was they said, look, how do we win this award?
Yeah.
And they wanted me to go down to Mombasa, but I'm a man, I don't like spending money, because any money I spend, I'd like to spend it sponsoring students rather than, traveling down and, living the big life, okay, because
Yes.
too. But anyway, in this case here, I said, look, I sent them the set of financial statements, the winning SACCO. I said, look, do what they're doing and you'll get there.
Yeah.
And they're not, I can't say if they're going to win or not, but they've done very much better.
I see.
So it's rather like, look, we are a running nation, okay? And why is that the case? Well, if you go back to Kipchoge Keino, okay, he won the 1,500 meters in Mexico City. Amos Biwott won the 3,000 meters steeplechase. Now, those people provide an example, okay? And the result is, we have people who are ready up in E10, up in Eldoret, okay, to become world champions. Unfortunately, I don't know if you read that thing about that lady who's running for Qatar,
Yes.
okay? And this, unfortunately, I was talking to a young lady. I had lunch with her. She's one of my past students, and she actually said, look, I was really keen on athletics, but I was then going to see if I could represent Kenya, but I had to pay. I've just said, forget it, But anyway, here you're getting your annual report examined by expert accountants. They're not just, hey, where could you? These are people who know what they're doing. I remember last year, okay, a partner from PKF phoned me up and said, look, I've got this set of financial statements. Is this the right one? And so on. Now, you've got a partner in a professional firm doing
yes.
it, and so you're getting really expert people, okay, examining your financial statements, examining your annual report, and saying, look, this is where you're not going to be the winner. Why? Because of this,
One, two, three
you
things. And suddenly there's value there. But tell us, we have the conference slated for December the 5th.
Yeah.
What happens at the conference?
So, well, one of the things is that, the three top judges, we're going to finish the private sector by tomorrow evening. And then we're going to spend we're already working on the public sector, but we're going to finish that by first dawn Monday morning, because sometimes for this you have to work overnight, okay?
Yeah.
But anyway, now we then have a wealth of experience about, the ins and the outs and so on. So in this case here, we then can be at that conference next Thursday. It's at the Serena. You can, in fact, the Fire Award has its own website.
Yeah.
You just simply put into Google Fire Award, okay, you get to the website, you can book your place at the conference for Thursday. It's going to be in the Serena. The Friday, we have the gala in the evening,
Yep.
and then also the presentation of the prizes. And just a point there, okay, because one of the things that we try to do is to make sure that this is done absolutely, there's no magendo in this whatsoever, okay? So that, for example, a lot of the people who are in the finals are people who've had PricewaterhouseCoopers as their auditor. Now, one of our final judges, one of our judges at the top level is a partner from PricewaterhouseCoopers. So we make sure that he will not examine any of those financial statements there, because obviously there could be a bias,
Yeah, exactly.
We've also got, so that's Anthony Murage, so, and we then have Steve Obok, okay, who is a partner in KPMG, a number of companies which are finalists, as it were, they're in the finals. They've been audited by KPMG, so we make sure that none of those are examined by Stephen, okay, so that, we have independence there. And I'm then, if there is something, I will look through all of the final numbers. And if I see something a little bit strange, now look, this one here was, at the second level, it was way down. Now it's gone right up. Why is that the case? And, you know, these two numbers do vary. Okay. You know, we have found that the first level are much more strict, as it were, than the second level. You know, that's a general rule. But sometimes it can go the other way, you know, because a person at a high level may be, you know, for example, Anthony Moraga is absolutely, you know, an expert in IFRS 17 for insurance companies,
yes,
and IFRS 9, okay, for banks and so on.
Thanks.
So, you know, this means that you have an absolute expert looking at your annual report. Wow, this really adds value. And, you know, as I was coming out of Strathmore this morning, I said, you know, a friend of mine said, oh, fire award. Because I told him I was coming here to meet you, actually. But so, anyways, I said, yeah. And he says, do the companies have to pay to enter? I said, no. It's sponsored by a number of people. You know, the Institute of Certified Public Accountants is the entity which actually began this.
Yes.
But then when Johnny Giraini was the CEO of ISPAC, he brought in the CMA, the Capital Markets Authority, the Nairobi Securities Exchange. We then have the Retirement Benefits Authority.
RBA.
And then the Public Sector Accounting Standards Board has also come in now. So we've got those 5 sponsors. So I said, no, a number of bodies sponsor. He says, does KRA sponsor?
That's a good one. Prof, we have 2 minutes literally to go, and I'd like to invite you to give us your parting shot and just speak to us in terms of what to expect in terms of key outcomes from the Fire Awards.
Well, you see, you know, a number of years ago, Standard & Poor's studied financial statements for the top 500 in the US, for the top 100 in the UK, France, Germany, Argentina, Australia, New Zealand, India. And I then said, well, look, what about me doing Nairobi? And, you know, in fact, it was done by Standard & Poor's. It's an American entity, and, you know, the Americans think that they are the be-all and end-all. So they actually fudged the numbers so that the 500 S&P companies in the US came number 1, and then number 2. We were very highly placed. We are above many countries around the world. Yeah. So our financial reporting is excellent. You know, the disclosures, they're fantastic. And, you know, I think the Fire Award can be thanked, you know, and we got to thank the people who started the Fire Award, and Johnny Giraini, but the Institute, which keeps it going. And it's a big thing for the Institute. Every year it's a big thing. And let's face it, let's thank also the Nairobi Securities Exchange for being one of the sponsors, the Capital Markets Authority, the Retirement Benefits Authority, the Public Sector Accounting Standards Board. These people have all got to be thanked. But, you know, the great thing here is you can come along, you can listen, and you can listen to people who really know what they're talking about. And the dinner, which is going to be on Friday night, not this week, but in a week's time.
6th, yeah.
It's always a fantastic affair. You'll see some people dancing, even Labda, Julians McFie.
Professor James McFie, thank you so much for creating time to speak to us. We have been touching base on the Fire Awards 2024 edition. Remember, drilling down to the conversation around sustainability and integrated reporting and why this is important as we move forward. Remember, not too long ago, ISPAC unveiled, that is the Institute of Certified Public Accountants, unveiled the roadmap for mandatory disclosures aligned to IFRS S1 general requirements and the IFRS S2 climate risk-related requirements. We shall continue highlighting these things. Professor James McFie, Chief Judge, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much indeed.
Keep it NTV for all the details on Fire Awards 2024 edition.